What's up, guys? How you doing? This is Micah Dobbins, host of the Micah Dobbins Show, powered by Misfits of Media. And I am extremely excited about our panel and our guest that we have today as we discuss fatherlessness and American epidemic. Again, I want to welcome you guys to the show. So we have an amazing panel for you here today, and each of them are going to be given an opportunity to introduce themselves and to tell what they're going to bring to the discussion today. So we'll go ahead and start with Ms. Fronita. You can start first.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Fronita Holston, and I bring to the table some years of experience in early childhood education. I have a degree in community planning and economic development. So I learned a lot about human capital and how we need to develop as humans and what investments we need to make into ourselves in order to help have a better community. I have had a very special father in my life, and I was blessed to have two additional fathers. So that's what I bring to the table, that personal experience of the role that a father plays in your life.
All right, awesome. And we also have Efren Carino, whom I know is Frank, my friend here. And Frank, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody what you bring to the conversation?
Sure. My name is Efren. I have four kids that I've learned a lot from. They've taught me things about humans. And also I have college experience in philosophy and just a deep empathy for human beings, and just like you, Mike.
Awesome. All right, glad to have you. And we also have Amy Tarver. So go ahead and introduce yourself for the people.
Hi, yes. My name is Amy Tarver, and I am a school counselor. I work with grades K through 8. And so as you can assume, I work with many students who are fatherless and who do not have fathers that play active roles in their lives. I, however, was very blessed to have had a father in my life. And so I am very grateful for his active role. And prior to becoming an educator, I worked in television and film. So I feel like I have a pretty diverse background and have worked with a lot of different people and a lot of different types of fathers.
All right. Awesome. So we got a well-rounded panel for an awesome show for you guys tonight. And we're going to go ahead and open up with our first question, which is, what is your definition of a father? All right. Whoever wants to go first, what is your definition of a father?
So for me, a definition of a father is someone who is the leader of the family, someone who is there to support you, and someone who wants to protect and take care of his family. So someone who's there.
All right. Awesome. All right. Anyone else?
Yes, I would agree. I see a father as being a protector. And I think when a child feels protected, you can feel secure and confident. So that's when I think of a father, I think of that protector.
Awesome. Outstanding.
But I think, Micah, for me, in the olden days, a father protected and put food on the table, for example, and things of that nature. In 2021, I really believe the roles of the father have metamorphosed into some other things. And it's not about just bringing food on the table and taking care of your family. It's, from the emotional aspect to psychologically what you can provide to your family. Some of the roles and things have changed.
All right. Awesome. And I appreciate all of those answers. Yes, I'm in full agreement. There's so much that fathers have to bring to the table. And even as you mentioned, Frank, there are many new hats that some fathers may be unaware of. So we wanted to kind of touch on that today. And I want to go ahead and leave this disclaimer that although right now we're particularly highlighting the fathers, this is in no way throwing shade at the wonderful mothers out there, or even the fathers who may not be actively in their children's lives right now. We're hoping that this program will help you to kind of educate on a couple of things, hear a couple of different perspectives, and maybe one day measure up. Say, hey, I know what, I think I want to give this another try. I want to reconnect with my children, or other things that may be going on in your personal life. So don't take this as a bad thing. This is actually a positive show, and we just want to have a great discussion. But we're going to talk about some real topics like that, because it is something that's prevalent even in our current society. So I'm going to follow up for each one on the panel. Were you raised with the father? And if you were, how do you think that affected you? And that could include fatherly figures, stepfather, anyone else in the home. How did that affect you if you were raised with the father?
Well, I think for me, I talked earlier about the confidence, and my father really built my confidence as a woman. He was very strong in my life. His presence, he was always present. And so his wisdom that he shared, but also how he would encourage me to do certain things, or he would applaud me when I would achieve certain things. So I think, no, I don't think, I know
All right.
having him in my life really built my confidence to be able to do some things in life and not be afraid of challenges, that may come my way.
All right. All right.
I think for me, I had a strong father. He was military and he was an Army officer. So you would think that he would be more stern. However, he was very gentle with me and my sisters as well. And what my dad did for me was he taught me not only stability by him being there, but he was very open and he loved to talk, and he loved to talk about fairness. So he taught me a lot about being fair. One of his degrees was in sociology. So he was always interested in, how I felt and people's feelings, and how the world ran. And that transferred into our conversations. So we had a lot of great, deep conversations. And I think that's really important, because usually you think of a mom and a daughter, usually talking a lot, together. But it was great because my dad and I would take a lot of walks together and talk. And so that really made a difference, I feel like, in my life.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, for me, maybe a little bit different than that in a way, because my mom remarried when I was like 6 years old. So that was the last time I saw my real father. But I did get a stepdad a few years later, and he was a Marine. So I understand what you're saying, Amy, about the military dad. And one thing I will add real quick is that that older generation of fathers, a lot of them weren't able to deal with their feelings real well or communicate. So, Amy, when you say your dad was a great communicator with you, he was kind of an anomaly in a way, because most people of that age, they were basically not saying much to their children, and so we fast forward to now, and you have a bunch of a mass of people who are more in touch with their feelings, but almost too much.
All right. Awesome. Awesome answers. Yes, I agree. Just personal reflections and hearing you guys discuss it. I definitely agree with each of the panelists' views and their experience, with their fathers. I know for me personally, I had came later in the game, so a lot had kind of altered and shifted and changed because my father's military also. So when he would go overseas, I would be kind of like a little older and kind of started trying to handle things on my own. And when he came back from Korea, we kind of had like a little rough patch there because I was like, the rebellious youth, trying to do my thing. And he was pretty much a military, you're going to do what I say, or the highway kind of guy. And it was an interesting dynamic. I think it affected me, though, because as you all stated, having a male figure in the home can bring about a sense of comfort or strength. And knowing that I couldn't really it set boundaries for me personally, because around the age of 14, I kind of had this freedom to where I could kind of go out and hang out at night and do what I want because he's overseas. But then when he comes back, it's like, okay, I need you in the house by 9 o'clock when it gets dark. And I'm like, who is this guy talking to? What do you mean I got to be home? And it's like, oh, you're going to be home, and I made sure I made curfew after that. But I found that to be one of the things that helped and affected me, even in how I raised my own children and talk with them. It definitely played a role, integral part in my upbringing. All right, cool. So that's awesome. So I want to get your guys' input on something. In today's climate, and with everything that's going on, because Frank kind of alluded to fathers having to wear different hats and things have kind of changed in some roles. What do you think the hardest part of being a father would be today in like 2021? What would be one of the hardest things about being a father today?
I'm sorry, Amy, go ahead.
Oh, no, you sure? I was going to say, I just think one of the challenges probably for fathers today would be the technology that's out there, and just trying to navigate the fact that that's something new for them, but it's a really integral part of their children's lives. And so I think the technology, just knowing that their children may want to play on a device or, post things that a lot of fathers previously were not privy to. They didn't have that option. I think just trying to understand that relationship between the child and technology, and also how they fit in as a parent, because a lot of kids want to spend more time with that technology than their parent.
So true.
Oh, good observation. All right, anyone else?
And I think keeping the child protected, I'm back to that word again, especially with the technology, and trying to grasp and understand the level of exposure that our children receive through that technology. Back in the day, parents could kind of regulate things a little bit more, turn the TV off, but now they have these devices and they're exposed to everything. So I think for a father trying to set those boundaries and give good guidance, it's very conflicted.
Okay.
Yeah, that's been a big challenge for me. I can only imagine the rest of the world. All y'all are included, obviously, but dealing with devices and internet access and the amount of information that these little kids are processing, it's not like a little kid growing up in the 1980s, for example.
True. No, I agree. That's definitely a challenge in today's climate. I think the technology, for those who may not have been tech savvy or even interested when computers first came on the scene. And, that's kind of a complaint you hear sometimes from different men. They'll say, oh, man, there they go, them games again, or they're all on the social media. What's a selfie, doing these things. And then there's a flip side. There's guys who may be on the cutting edge. Maybe they work in IT or they're familiar with the tech, but their challenges could be even since the pandemic. Like if the job lays you off and you're used to being able to, be that provider or be the one to have all the answers, and to be in a time of uncertainty like this, it definitely can become a challenge for fathers. And I remember there was a paper I read because, like I said, my father was military, and they had this paper where they were saying that when a parent comes back from deployment, the father, that it's important to feel needed. So they were saying that you might want to leave certain things undone that you used to handle by yourself while they were away so that it gives them their sense of where they belong when they come back home, because they've been gone, be it in combat zone or in other missions across the world, and they're already worried about the family. Then when they come home, and it's like if mom is like doing everything and he's just kind of watching it all happen like on TV, then it can enhance like post-traumatic stress syndrome and other type of mental ailments in their cases. So I find it interesting because I want to know just kind of what you guys thought. And technology is definitely huge because right now everything has been, from school to work, from home, it's all been computer technology based. So I can imagine that being a big challenge for the fathers out there today. Now, this next question, how do you see society's views as far as fatherhood in today's culture? And when I say today's culture, I mean like the movies, the film, entertainment, music. How do you see society when they look at the father? Like, how do you feel that, I guess, they're portrayed or characterized, if you will, in today's culture? What are your thoughts on that? And I got a couple of quotes to kind of add fuel to the fire. I remember, because my generation, of course, was like Biggie, Pac, Eminem. And I remember a lyric Biggie did in the song, The What, where he was saying, ready to die, why I act that way. Pop Duke left Mom Dukes, took the back way. And he was saying that because his father left his mother, he was ready to die. You know, he had anger or resentment. Tupac and Dear Mama, you know, which was an ode to his mother, but he was saying, ain't nobody tell us it was fair, no love for my daddy because the coward wasn't there. He left me alone and I didn't cry because my anger wouldn't let me feel for a stranger. You say, yeah. When he said, he passed away and I didn't cry because my anger wouldn't let me feel for a stranger. So you had Pac, who had a bitterness, and this was portrayed in media, and children heard this around the world. And even down to like Eminem, when he said, by the way, when you see my dad, tell him I slit his throat in a dream that I had. So you have this anger or resentment that a lot of these lyricists may have felt. There may be portrayals on television of these things. How do you see society's views on that, and how has it affected our modern culture?
Hey, Mike, I'll jump in on this one. One thing first off I want to say is I was just thinking about what y'all thought, Amy and Fernita. What do you think would be the impact of how things are today with Android devices, and what's the impact of that on future fatherhood, on how fathers will be in the future? That was one thing I was thinking about. And then what you were just talking about as far as how they're portrayed, I'm not quite sure exactly because I don't watch a lot of TV like that. But I will say that I read an article recently about how population is decreasing. So I also know that, like, for example, my son, my 19-year-old son, he says, Dad, I don't want to really be a father. And it makes me think about, I bet a lot of this younger generation, they're not thinking about being a father. That was one of the things for my life that was going to really make my life, was that I wanted a family, a wife that loves me, and have these children that I bring up and love me back. That was one of my major goals in life, actually. So when I think about this younger generation, maybe there's a shift here of how they're thinking, and they're not really thinking about fatherhood at all.
Yeah, it's a shift in values. It makes sense.
Yes.
I would agree with Frank. First of all, I don't watch a whole lot of TV, but I have been binge watching this one show because we kind of know one of the persons in the show, but or know of the person. But in that show, the father or parents, period, are just completely disrespected. I mean, disrespected. And I think that that's the way Hollywood is, or our TV or whatever. It's portraying, the whole relationship of family. It's out of order in that sense that there is no disrespect. There is no boundary between the parent and the children anymore.
Right.
And I think that technology has added to that now, because there was a time when you would go to your parents for information, but now you don't go, or children aren't going. They'll just Google it and get it. And then, and then they'll come and tell you. So I think that society is not embracing fatherhood. And I would even question if we're doing a good job of it. And I'll bring this part in the church. I don't know if we're encouraging our singles to really, get yourself steadfast and get you a wife, get you a wife for the male, so that you can have a family and be that father and raise your family. We just see a lot of embracing of, this relationship, unmarried people. And I think there's a shift in the way we're seeing fatherhood negatively.
All right. Interesting. Very interesting.
I would just add that, obviously having the absence of a father makes a difference. The family unit is important, and it's crucial because you learn as a child from both parents. And so that's why you did have the artists such as Biggie, and you had Tupac, who expressed their anger, rightfully so, because when a child grows up without a parent, they a lot of times internalize it and they think there's something wrong with them. Or they look at it as the parent abandoned them, and it could have just been the relationship. It could have been the woman. It could have, lots of many different reasons it could have been. But as a child, they're going to internalize that. And what is going to come of that if they are not talking about it and expressing their feelings, other than the fact that anger and that resentment. So I think that is still, unfortunately, being perpetuated today in the breakdown of the families. I did realize that the population is shrinking. I did a little bit of research on that and noticed that a lot of people, if they aren't choosing to have children later in life, they're choosing to not have children at all, which is really quite interesting. And so that, will play an important part of our society as time goes on and in the future. If we have less fathers there, we will see more of that anger and that frustration that was perpetuated in those lyrics and so many others. If you listen to other artists as they're expressing themselves, we'll see more of that. We definitely need fathers just as much as we need mothers. But we also need to be able to express what that's like when we have less, when we have a society that has less fathers.
No, that's true. I appreciate the comments on that. And then just as you were saying it, I was thinking along the lines of, even with the music, and we mentioned like the television series that Anita mentioned, that the parents were disrespected. And that was one of the studies that I was looking at, the TV dad, and how society has changed the view from the TV dad to where, like, when you watch like Leave It to Beaver, My Three Sons and all those, the dad would sit around with a newspaper and, a little pipe, and the mom would come and he would pat the kids on the head and sit in his favorite chair. But then we went through a time period where it was no longer, those kind of fathers, but it kind of transitioned to where you had these, I guess like the Fred Flintstone syndrome, where the fathers were kind of brunt of the joke and they kind of became, clownish almost. We had shows like Good Times where you were scared of James, but by the time you get to like the Jeffersons or some of these other shows, they kind of started to kind of veer a different direction. And with the exception of maybe like the Cosby Show, a lot of the dads that were portrayed were dumbed down. Like when you look at shows like Home Improvement, the dad is kind of a doofus and the mom always fixes the issue. Or like Homer Simpson, when the Simpsons came on the scene in the 80s, Homer's primary objective was to choke Bart. And was to, almost wreck the car and never know what's going on. Even though that was a cartoon. I mean, Jimmy Neutron was a cartoon. But if you look at like shows like Malcolm in the Middle or Married with Children with Al Bundy, it became a thing where disrespecting the dad and clowning on him and him not really knowing. I mean, even down to Fresh Prince, as much as I love the shows, Uncle Phil was kind of the brunt of all the jokes for a good amount of time until it was time for him to man up and kind of handle things. So I do believe that society has kind of lost its way a little bit. And maybe that's why people don't even want to be fathers, because like, I don't want to be talked about. I definitely don't want to be the deadbeat dad everybody clowns on. I just rather not even have kids, and it's too wild out here. And one of the things I looked at when I was doing my research for this, in 2007, Verizon had an ad that ultimately got banned because it showed the father is clueless. He was trying to help his daughter, say he was helping her with the homework, and he couldn't even wash the dog right. And men began to protest. I mean, they got angry because they were saying, man, you're portraying us like we are not able to communicate with our children. You know what I mean? And then in 2012, Huggies had an ad where basically they said, we're going to give you the ultimate dad test. Can you survive changing a diaper, being alone with your child? And there were men who were highly offended because they were like, what you trying to say? I can't change a diaper? I mean, I can't. And I know that society may have seen in the past a lot of fathers who weren't engaged. But as time progressed, getting in touch with your sensitive side or having an understanding of how to bond with the children did start to kind of resonate with some fathers. So in your opinion, do you feel that the portrayal of the TV dad has a hope in the future? Will they ever get it back to the episodes of like a Bill Cosby type thing? Or do you think that's pretty much gone and we're just going to move on with this new thing that they're doing now?
Well, I think there are seasons in Hollywood, and I think they go through different transitions based on the audience, based on what's popular in pop culture. I know when Kobe Bryant passed away, it was really popular for a lot of the guys to to hashtag, girl dad, things like that. I think, seeing him represent fatherhood with his daughters, I think that gave a lot of men some pride, those that do have children and in particular girls, and who spend time with them. I think that gave them a sense of pride. I think we would see a shift if we see more of that. And it's going to have to, obviously, if we're going to look at entertainment, it's got to come from entertainment. So therefore, you would need more entertainers. I believe Kirk Franklin and a few others had a show, or they were at least, maybe it was like a one-time show, but they were talking about being dads, being fathers. So I think, Hollywood is just going to have to put out more of that. And in order for us to see more of a positive light. Society, has always kind of taken a cue from what Hollywood is doing, and whether it's to mock it or whether it's to imitate it. So I think if we want to see more positive shows about dads, then we're going to need to see more of those that are higher in power, putting out those shows, or either more of the celebrities and the entertainers promoting those type of images on their Instagram, because nowadays people aren't necessarily watching TV, they're watching their phones.
Right.
We're going to need to see more dads standing up and doing that to make it seem cool, to be a dad. I think we need to see more of that, and that's going to have to come from either the influencers or the entertainers, and those that that have an audience.
Awesome.
It makes me think of a recent movie that does fit the bill on that, Amy, is The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith.
That was just
Right. That always hits me in the heart pretty good. But that's been a few years since it, and there hasn't been a lot since then, right?
Yeah. I think it would be great to have more like that. I mean, there was one thing that I did pick up with the Coming to America 2, even though I know everybody in the Twitterverse had an opinion and everything. The thing that did stand out to me was that the movie was like PG-13 when the original was like R. So I was like, okay, well, this is definitely 2021 Eddie Murphy compared to 1980-something Eddie Murphy. But the thing that I picked up in my viewership of it was how it kind of highlighted the son-father relationship, the father-daughter relationship, and how he parented kind of came up in a couple of segments of the show, which I thought was kind of different. And then the fact that I found his daughter actually played a part in it, I said, that's probably why he cleaned a lot of it up. Because now, you get your daughter sitting right here front and center with the camera with you. And it's like, oh, yeah, I used to be that raw Eddie Murphy, but we're going to change this up. And it kind of had a more family kind of, people said it. They were saying, pretty much they felt that they made this for the kids. But I think that, like you guys said, that role of having a caring, loving father, responsible father is missing, and it would be great to see it come back. I too enjoyed Pursuit of Happiness. You get moved to tears when he's sitting on the bathroom floor holding his son, like crying, trying to imagine we're in this nice jungle, but we're actually in a public bathroom just trying to sleep. That was a pretty solid film that Will did there. Kudos to Will for that one. I wanted to point out something else too, because we talked about the music for a minute. And I noticed there's been lots of studies on misogynistic lyrics or violence against women in the musical content. However, you don't see many studies on, as I quoted some of those lyricists, on fatherlessness. And I'm wondering, do you guys see a correlation there that not having a father can somehow make them more violent towards women or violent towards the opposite sex in general? And why is that kind of falling on deaf ears? Like a lot of times, like I say, it's like, hey, he did this video with these girls. It was bad. But it's like, why is he like that? Like what went on in his life to get his head to that place? But what were your thoughts on that? Or had anybody considered or studied anything on that?
I'll say something again. As far as fathers, on TV and the lack thereof, it makes me think about when you talk about the misogynistic lyrics and what is portrayed in entertainment. And then when you think about father and fatherlessness, that's not being portrayed at all. So the powers that be, they must not want us to think about fatherlessness, because maybe fatherlessness is you become at the doorstep of making a change. And that's just my idea on that a little bit.
I mean, I definitely think there's an impact, obviously, like I said, with not having the fathers. I also feel like they don't have a role model. So if they don't have a father to show them what it is like to be a man, how to treat women, how to respect women, then they're just going to go off of what either they are shown from someone else who also probably didn't have a father in their life, or something that they've seen on a film or in, on television. So I feel like, that plays a part. Also, I feel like though too, and I've been saying this for quite a while, that when you see little boys being raised, they're what? They're taught, oh, you're so cute, you're so handsome, you're going to be a player. All the girls are going to love you, right? So to me, that's detrimental because, when you're telling this 3 or 4 year old who's probably just as cute as a button that all the ladies are going to love him, you're already letting him know, oh, I should have all these women love me, not just, oh, one day you'll grow up and you'll get a wife. But no, you're saying all the girls are going to love you. You're going to be a ladies' man, right? So those are the things that we're saying. And then we're wondering why we have these misogynistic lyrics. But we've kind of started with this young generation and this society of young boys, letting them feel like that's what makes them who they are, right? They walk around feeling very prideful and full of pride because, hey, I've got all the women who like me and who want to be with me or who think I'm all of that, right? So, I think that we're going to have to start with the younger generation, those that are, that are younger. We're going to have to start kind of watching what we say, what we are, putting into our kids, what we want to see from them. So if you want to see, let them know, hey, wow, you're going to make a great dad someday to one woman. Because when you have a dad who has children by multiple women, that you've got the whole structure of the family that's already broken up. You have these kids that are siblings that are coming from different homes and aren't really, they're not getting a chance to really even get to know their own siblings because one may be going to this mother's home, one may be going to that mother's home. And it really does affect the kids, So then we do have this society where no one has shown them what it's supposed to, what normal or what a loving family is supposed to look like, a structure of having everyone together, in that unit. And that's why we have the lyrics that we have and some of the even with the young ladies, why they're doing some of the things that they're doing in these videos and things like that. Because again, the lack of a male role model to let them know that's not how a lady should be treated.
All right.
Exactly. And as you were talking, I was thinking that a father helps you to find your value, and I have 8 brothers, 7 that are living. And so, my father, he ruled with a very, iron fist, so to speak. But his example of being that father and caring for all of us was a good role model for my brothers in that sense. So you do have to teach children to find value. And I think a good father brings that to the table, and you find value in the role of the mother and that respect that comes with that. And the father can really teach that to the children by the way he treats the mother. And I think that's very important. And it's missing. It is missing in our society.
Oh yeah, I agree. I remember my first time. My wife asked me like, "Where did you learn how to do these things?" When I would like try to get flowers or do romantic stuff, and I was like, "I learned it from my dad." Dad put me on. Like when I was younger, like, "Oh, you get her a bear, you get her this, you do this," and he I remember I was a little older. A friend of mine, we joke about it sometimes, even to this day. We were riding to school one day because we used to have to get a ride to the MARTA station to go to our school we went to. And my dad decided to have the talk, like while me and one of my homeboys were riding in the van, in the car, and we're riding, and he's like, "Now, young man, I want to tell you something about women. Women, this, that, and the third." And he's just like looking at me, and I'm so embarrassed. I'm shrinking in my seat, like I can't believe this dude is really talking to me about women right now, and my homeboy. And I took it for granted, but years later, that friend was like, "Micah, that conversation your dad had, my dad never talked to me about nothing like that." He said that was like one of the realest talks that we had. And I knew the talk soon as he said it. I remember the talk. And And when you were saying, you know, how your dad ruled with an iron fist, I think that the presence of a father does help in a disciplinarian kind of way. Because I mean, we love mom, but mom's like, look, I ain't playing. And it's like, oh, you're so cute, you mad, you know. But when dad says, hey, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, it's time to stop. And I remember hearing footsteps when he would come up and say, everybody go to bed. And when you hear doom, doom, it's like if you weren't asleep, you pretending. Like you were diving into bed and you weren't doing anything. So I do believe that it's something that's missing today with a lot of our young men. I believe that's why they mistreat some of the young women. I saw a video that broke my heart. This girl did a prank with her boyfriend and was just saying she wanted to break up with him. No reason, just like, oh, this relationship's dead. I'm tired of it. I want to break up with you. And he just starts swinging on the girl. And I don't think she intended for the prank to go that far. Like, he swung and she was crying. Like, it's a joke, it's a prank. He's like, don't play with me like that, bro. Don't play with me like that, bro. And I just can't imagine growing up calling your girl, bruh, like putting her like one of the homies, like, what up, G? What up, gangster? No, that's your lady. You know what I mean? So times have definitely changed.
Mhm.
Yes, I agree. Times have definitely changed. And I remember, like I said, my dad always walking on the outside whenever we would walk down the street. And he would always say, if something happened, if a car comes, I want to make sure you're safe and get you out of harm's way. And you know, again, those are some of the things that a lot of people are missing, either from a standpoint of learning how to be a man and protect a woman, and also from the woman's standpoint of understanding that a man should be protecting you and not harming or hurting you.
That's interesting. And you know, one of the articles that I was reading about the father, it was talking about early on how when a father is active in their child's life, again, we go back to that attachment and that security that that child feels. And I can attest to that. And, you know, so yeah, it doesn't surprise me if we have these homes that have these many or varied situations going on, that these other emotions don't come into play because, you know, the child is split up in several different places and not sure who to permanently attach themselves to. So
Right.
that's really serious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was reading something while I was preparing for this show, and it was talking about how the importance of a father to a son. Number one is empathy. It was saying that when you take away the father, then there's a lack of empathy that gets developed and becomes stronger. And then the second thing it said was that the person without a father loses control over the course of their lives, control over things, I imagine. And I was thinking a little bit about it, and I was thinking how it's so important to be successful in life as far as to be able to control your impulses and control your desires. And you know, when you have the devil on your shoulder here, and then you got the angel here, and it's important not to listen to this guy, you know, as best you can. And so going back to the ability to control your life and control your impulses, well, these little guys and young girls, they're starting off at a disadvantage like that because, you know, as far as empathy also, I would have to say that, like, the ability to feel what your fellow human being is feeling, as opposed to not caring what your fellow human being is feeling. And you can imagine all the prisons and all the jails that are filled with so many people who they just don't care anymore because they don't have that empathy. So it makes sense how it all kind of interlocks like that.
Yes. I mean, one of the studies that I looked at, ironically, because when she brought up some of the new communities and the things that children are going through, even the emotional changes they're going through, hormonal changes, I was looking at a survey that was saying that a child from the womb hearing the father's voice and the mother's voice through communication affects their development. They were saying that when a young boy or girl comes out of the womb and the father holds them and they feel the edge of their beard, that it helps the boys to identify with masculinity, and that it affects the girls emotionally with a protectant, to having somebody to support. And this is things they've done as far as psychologically, they've said. And I know from a spiritual perspective that, you know, when God created us, he gave distinct roles for a reason to kind of help people to navigate through this life. But a lack of a father, not having a Abraham in a sense, or not having a Moses or someone there to kind of help guide and to instruct a young man, can leave him to his own devices. And as Frank said, it brings about all kind of impulses because he's never seen discipline in action from a male. And, you know, mom will definitely do an awesome, outstanding job, you know, trying to tell all she can for that young man. But when it comes to how to, like, you know, deal with a girlfriend and things, mom's cries may fall on deaf ears because it's like, well, my dad wasn't there for me. You don't know what it's like. Obviously, you know, he wasn't happy, whatever you had going on. So let me and her do what we gonna do versus having a father saying, son, that's not how I raised you. You don't treat a woman like that. You know, I know for a fact if my father had ever heard of me ever putting my hands on anybody, he would have knocked my block off. You know, and a lot of people in today's society be like, no, you don't handle it that way. I'm just telling you, back in the day, if he would have heard that I put my hands on anybody's daughter, he like, have you lost your mind? You don't do that, you know. But a mother may not be able to have that same kind of force against a son, especially when they outgrow them. I've seen it time and time again where once those boys get height, get a beard, get some bass in their voice, they running to mama. They telling her when they coming in. And some of them making children in her house. And she's like, I don't want you doing this. Oh, mom, I'm the man of the house now. You know, and they don't even know what it is to be a man. So unfortunately, these things are an issue. And I wanted to read something right quick. You guys touched on a lot of it. I'm going to try to touch each point so that we can move along because we're talking about society now, as well as the school systems. But according to Psychology Today, there was a study. This was taken from 2021. It says as far as the institution of parenting and fathers, they said that children raised without the father have a diminished self-concept or compromised physical and emotional security. They feel abandoned when their fathers are not involved in their lives. They struggle with emotions or episodic bouts of self-loathing, which could bring depression, they were saying. They said it also breeds behavioral problems. Fatherless children have more difficulties with social adjustments and are more likely to have problems with friendships and manifest behavioral problems. Many develop a swagger and intimidating persona in an attempt to disguise their underlying fears, resentments, anxiety, or unhappiness. So they become like tough because they're really hurting and they're scared and they're alone. But it's like I get more attention when I'm a thug and people like look to me that way. So I'm going to act out in class. You know, they say truancy and poor academic performance. 71% of high school dropouts are from fatherless homes. They say fatherless children have more trouble academically, scoring more poorly on tests of reading, mathematics, and thinking skills. And they're also more likely to play truant from school or to cut class. Even when it comes to dropping out at the age of 16, they're saying that it makes and the other point is promiscuity, teen pregnancy, delinquency as far as youth and crimes. They say 85% of the youth in prison have absent fathers. And the fatherless children are more likely to offend or go to jail as adults. Drug and alcohol abuse, 90% of runaway children, they say, that are homeless come from absent fathers, and even exploitation and abuse. I mean, Atlanta is a big hub for sex trafficking. And they were saying that children from a fatherless home have a greater risk of suffering those kind of emotional, sexual things, being 5 times more likely to have experienced physical abuse or emotional mistreatment. And they're actually 100 times at a higher risk of a fatal abuse. It said preschoolers not living with both biological parents are 40 times more likely to be sexually abused. So we have a lot of statistics and data showing us that there's a problem. What do you think some solutions would be? Do we, do more programs with the fathers? Like, what are some ideas that you may have that can kind of help turn the tide on the statistics? And when I looked at it, it's not necessarily a black or white thing. When I'm going over the numbers, it's across the board. They're saying, regardless, black, white, Hispanic, or other, there may be differences in the numbers in those communities, but the same problem is across the board. So what were some ideas just from you guys you think could help curb some of these plagues on our society right now, these statistics that are plaguing us?
I mean, I think, you're going to have to start with the family unit because, if you have these fatherless children because you don't have a strong relationship between the parents. So I think that's where it's going to have to start is some type of, obviously people need to be more open to counseling, to therapy, to learning how to communicate with each other and to even express your differences and your opinions, but in a loving and mutually respectful way. Because even if unfortunately you end up not being together, if you have love and mutual respect for each other, you can at least be co-parents to a point where that child doesn't feel that abandonment of a parent who may not be getting along with the other parent, so they totally leave the picture. So then the child, like I mentioned earlier, does feel the abandonment. So I think it's going to start with the relationships with the adults. So then that way that they can have, like I said, that strong unit so that the children can see both parties interacting and how you should mutually respect each other, even in, like I said, with disagreements. One of the other tragedies of single family homes is that there's higher level of poverty, right? And it makes sense if you think about it. I'll use even my example. So between me and my ex-husband, between the rents that we were paying, high rents, especially in California, we were paying between the two of us $3,500.
Wow.
Well, that's a mortgage. And in other states, that's even, twice, of what a person would pay for a mortgage. But you're talking about two different homes paying two different electricity bills, two different gas bills, so when you, and all the other expenses that come along with your own home. So when you think about that money being divided like that can bring about poverty for the children. That's money that they are now not able to use to help if they have a learning disability and need some type of tutoring. So I think it mainly starts with us having as a society to really work on relationships and promoting, that togetherness and promoting the family unit and the benefits that it will bring about for the next generation, for the children. So that we don't see these children out there that are truant because one parent may be at work.
That's right.
So they don't know that the child is truant. And by the time that parent, if they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, get home, they're not really trying to, especially now, log on to see if their child was logged on, because they may be going to school virtually, or to see if they did their homework, because either they might have left them with a relative or a neighbor, or the child may be left alone at home because they had to be able to work and put food on the table. So, there's so many different dynamics. But again, if you can start with that unit, getting that unit strong, where you have those two people that are raising and each being a part of that child's life, that can make a difference.
Yes. And I agree with that. That was excellent. I think if we partner education and, I'll use this term, faith-based organizations to begin to re-educate our community on the importance of the family structure. And we begin to create this village around us where we include everyone in the raising of our little ones. They're important and they're valued. And if we don't do that, we're going to continue to see this breakdown, because people don't have an understanding of how important the family structure is. And so it's just a repetitive cycle. And then we're not really educating our little ones on how important it is to be a part of a family. And one day they're going to grow up and have a family.
Right.
So it's kind of like, putting in build that village. You can survive it. It can't. Our children will survive.
Yes. Very, very good points.
Micah, I was thinking when she was saying that, it kind of leads us back to our initial thought, which was how does phones and Androids and being on the internet and being online and dealing with social media affect how people feel about relationships? And it could be possible that a large amount of the population could be thinking, hey, I get a lot of through my likes and through the attention that I get online. I kind of don't need a boyfriend, maybe, or something like that. I mean, that's definitely feasible for, I think, a percentage of people more. And we know better. We know that we need a partner, something to share in with. But if you have this device that has the ability to kind of give you take the edge off that, off the absence of having a partner, then how will that affect us with children and with relationships? And I mean, why work on a relationship if you don't even really want to care to be in one?
That's true.
That's just some food for thought.
No, I understand what you're saying, that people can find validation or affirmation through their devices, and through their likes. Because they do say, I think it prompts, what they call it, endorphins in the brain, depending on how many likes or views you get. And it gives a rush, in a sense, almost of like akin to like gambling when you win. It's like, oh, it's euphoria because everybody's looking at me right now. And then half the time social media is giving a very small, narrow, more than likely not true view of the person's life. Because, they only put their best photos up and you don't know how many selfies they took to get that perfect one that 200 people hit like, or 300 or whatever. But it took many, many tries over and over again to get that one like that they wanted. So you're right. I believe that there's a correlation there, even that our devices can become our companions, or people will find it in other things. But I appreciate each of those comments. I definitely agree. Only thing I would probably add in, just as you mentioned, like faith-based organizations, or if the church would kind of like level up and really meet the community where they are. And I had to bring that out because that's something that a lot of people may not fully understand the importance of. But a lot of the strives that have been made in society, even the idea of family and instruction, a lot of our universities or HBCUs, et cetera, were birthed from like church movements, and having a faith-based foundation through Christ can help you to kind of have the level-headedness in the relationship, because eventually you're going to want to set boundaries. And it's like, if we don't have any boundaries, and this is something I've even seen that I think is going to affect our children long-term. There are people that I know personally that are like advocating like polygamy. Not polygamy. Like, I can have more than one wife, but you can only have one husband. And like, when you have this kind of a thing going on, and kids are being brought up in a household where daddy got like 5 or 6 mamas running around here, it's almost akin to them being raised with the pimps. Like, he got woman here, woman there, he's doing it all. And I believe it does affect them, and even the daughters, how they view themselves and their worth. Am I the apple of his eye, or am I just one of many flowers that he got in the field that he mess with whenever he want? And I hate to go graphic like that, but it's just the reality that a lot of these children are facing today, and a lot of what we're going through. So I do believe faith-based organizations, and maybe even getting the word out more. People like communicating. Amy, you mentioned conversations. We're so afraid to conversate about things in today's time. For one, you get canceled for anything. Two, you know what I mean? You conversate and the person don't want to hear you. They just block you, delete you, unfriend you, and they go their way. Right. So we got to get back to the art of dialogue and conversation, where people can be open with how they feel. And I think when they're truly open to how they feel, there's room for education and to learn, and for information to flow both ways. But if one is hiding because they're afraid of what society's going to say, then we're going to have problems. But cool. Our last point we want to go over, and we'll wrap it up. But I wanted to kind of touch on this just quickly, is there is a term used for recidivism, which is when people are repeat offenders and keep ending back in the penal criminal system. And I see a correlation in the studies that a lot of the people who did not have an authoritative figure or father, from one study, they were saying that Mother's Day, all the inmates want to send out a card because it's Mother's Day and they want to, let mom know they love her. But then they saw on the flip side, on Father's Day, there are barely any of them that request a card. It's like, daddy who, So there's got to be this distinct connection in the mind of, the criminal who doesn't have a father. And I kind of wanted to share some things to see what you guys may think on the subject. They were saying, as far as the state of Illinois, Chicago, because usually people point to Chicago for a higher crime rate, but I'm not going to pick on Chicago tonight. I think it's a beautiful city. Frank, you know that. And all up in it. It's a great city. I like Chicago. But one of the things they were saying about Illinois is they were saying the average cost of one recidivism event, one person getting re-incarcerated again, the average cost is $151,662 to the taxpayers. And they were saying, given the trends over the next 5 years, it's going to cost the state of Illinois over $13 billion because of repeat crime. And 46% of those 71,000 convictions, they were saying 46% were misdemeanors, but 54% were felonies. So what's happening is you're having a situation where they're graduating. They may have gotten in the juvenile system when they were younger for misdemeanors, but then there's this statistic, if they don't have a father or somebody in the home to check them, they have so many more percentage likely to go back to the prison system. And I just wanted to know, have you guys seen that even in the school systems? Do you see the police officers now being introduced to the school? Does it help? Does it hurt these kids? Are they becoming more aggressive in their behavior? And is it a pattern of those who you know that fathers may not be actively involved? Or is that just across the board, kids are just wilding out nowadays? So sorry I asked so much. I'm going to ask our school experts first because I asked a whole lot in that. With the introduction of police officers in the schools, do you find that it's causing the children to behave better, or are they getting worse? And are they coming from single parent, no fathers, or what's the case there?
I'll give way to Amy because she works directly with the students. I'm kind of on the back end, so I'll let you go first with that, Amy.
I mean, I think the presence of the officer obviously makes the student behave on campus. When they leave campus, that might be a different story. Teenagers and young people are going to think rebelliously anyway. So anytime there's an authority figure trying to tell them something that's not something that they want to do, you're going to, see some of that bucking against the system. But I believe, obviously if there is a father in the home, they would recognize that there's someone that they are held accountable to. When the father's not there, and like I said, you have a mother who's probably out trying to work, then they in essence become the adult in the home while the parent is away. And therefore they feel like they kind of know it all. And so I wouldn't say that there's been an increase necessarily in crime. I think it's probably been about the same. I can't necessarily, and maybe even a little less, just because now you have so much technology. There's lots of cameras around. I think people are either becoming a little more wise in the crimes that they commit because they do realize that cameras are watching, whether it's a friend's camera, whether it's a Ring camera, so I don't see necessarily in the schools a lot of criminal activity in that sense. But again, I think a lot of it happens probably outside of the school when they are at home, when they are left alone, which again, that father in the home and the mother in the home, someone would usually be there to hold that child accountable for where they've been, so you're not out until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night because a parent is going to be there waiting for you to either come home to eat, do your chores, do your homework. They're going to want to know where you are. But unfortunately, when you have a lot of fatherless children, they don't have that someone who's holding them accountable for where they've been and their actions once they leave school. So I wouldn't say that I've seen a lot of it in school. Like I said, it could be that the presence of a resource officer could make a difference. It could be, making the difference. Or like I said, it could be the access more of cameras and also more eyes on you at school. You have teachers, you have counselors, you have other admin and faculty that are watching you. So I think the majority of the activity is happening outside of the schools, and it's unfortunate that I feel like the systems are failing them as far as the prison systems, because we're not reforming our prisoners and helping them to be better citizens when they come out, to get a job, we're not equipping them with the skill sets that they need
That's right.
to succeed in this new technology driven society.
Mhm.
So if you go to prison and you were 20 and now you get out 20 years later,
Mhm.
the world has changed drastically. It changes within, as you know, with us, iPhone, you get a new iPhone, every less than 12 months now. So imagine a prisoner who's, in prison, and you just release them and say, here you go, what are you expecting for them to do if they don't know how else they're going to get their next meal or how they're going to, afford rent, so we definitely need some changes in order to change those numbers.
I totally agree. And when she was talking about the school, I was thinking about the resource officers. Their presence does influence that behavior. But then when they leave school, you need those people in the community too, like we had when we were growing up. The old lady who sat on the front porch and was going to tell everything that went on.
Yes.
So again, our community has to get involved and get engaged. And that just comes through a process of educating and having this kind of discourse so that the word can get out, that everybody knows that each one of us play a role. I know of a family who had a young man in their community, and he had a little anger issue, and he would come over and play checkers or Uno, and if he lost, he would pitch a fit, like have a real anger. And he was in elementary school, but he also came from a broken home where he wasn't with his mother and he was living with his father. And the father of the home addressed him very strongly with that anger and told him, you will not behave that way in this house. If you enjoy playing here, you enjoy doing cards, then you will correct your behavior. And it was amazing to see the transformation of that young man. He comes back to that house, he plays cards, he plays the checkers, and no more anger issues for him, to the point where it even affected his behavior in school. He no longer gets in trouble at school like he used to. Not that he doesn't get in trouble at all, but not like he used to. So we have to know that we play a role too. We have to assist the school as they put the resource officers in. As bad as we don't want our young people to be still exposed to policing already, those of us as citizens and residents, we have to, being careful, of course, be influential where we can with the young people that encounter our lives as well.
All right.
I guess what I can add to that is when you talk about the recidivism rate and things of that nature, when you brought up earlier, Micah, about it cost $150,000 to warehouse a repeat offender, it just makes me think maybe it behooves certain people for that to exist. That's $150,000 per inmate. That's a lot of money. And if you can imagine why people would start building bigger jails and things of that nature, it makes sense why. And you talk about the privatization of jails, it behooves them to have inmates. And then when Amy was talking about what we can do to reform, that's what I'm saying. Maybe it behooves them not to reform. And so, I mean, this is just personally how I feel, but if it's not private, then they don't really have any stake in it, so to speak. And then they can focus maybe more on reform. One of my big ideas I was telling you about, Micah, earlier is just that if we could give them technology inside there so that they could learn how to, I'll give you an example, learn cryptocurrency and learn these new things called NFTs. And if we could maybe use the people who are on the lower end of the spectrum in jail or in prison, and we can turn them into people who are experts of an industry or gain resources in a new market, then we will have changed the whole complexion of society in a way. We'll have not clean the bottom end, but elevate the bottom end, and then that would show a reflection on all society. We will have literally improved our society right there. And if you take away ability for people to not want to commit crimes anymore because they can make money the legitimate way and they can make money where it boosts their self-confidence, then you're not going to have people committing crimes anymore. It's more fun to do it the other way now.
Right.
And you know, when you talk about those young children, those young sons, especially the fathers and the sons, and you know, it's so important, Micah. So I just want to say thank you guys for letting me talk a little bit, and I appreciate you, Fernita, and Amy also. Thank you so much.
No problem. We're glad you're able to talk today. And if anybody want to share any personal stories or connections, as we prepare to round it off and close out, I wanted to share some examples, and you guys touched on a lot of it beautifully, both from the prison system, things we need to do to reform. I remember, Frank, you were telling me ideas about bringing technology to help, and I was like, hey, maybe they could do some Tai Chi, you know, a soft martial art to help clear their mind or something. But I do believe that if we examine the fatherless epidemic and then go into the prisons with that mindset that these men are hurting for a different reason, and maybe try to get them the counseling and the spiritual help they need in those areas, in addition to giving them programs, we can kind of turn the tide a little bit. And I wanted to ask about, like I said, about the judge, as far as the police officers being in there, because I know some people, as Frank mentioned, it's the school to prison pipeline. They're saying, hey, you know, we're setting them up so that they know how to put their tray in a row. And if you're bad, you go to the quiet table or the quiet room. If you're good, you get rewarded. And you're kind of brainwashing them to be prepared to go if they cause problems in society down the road. But I love what Amy brought to the table, and Fernita, when she said, we got to get those moms that look out the window. It's like, I see you with the phone in their hand. Like, I see you, you know, and that fear of, I can't get away with this because, man, that lady there, that one there, they're going to tell, you know, or they'll let my parents know what I'm doing. So we definitely got to get back to those values. I was going to bring out some things personally that I've seen firsthand. And if any of you have a story you'd like to share, please do. Of any children you've met that maybe didn't have a father and how it impacted you or how you were able to positively impact them. And there's a ministry we work with where we go to DFACS. And when we go to DFACS, shout out to Miss Battle, who's over there and looking out for us when we come in. There have been a couple of episodes I've had with those children that have really cut me to the core, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to discuss the effects of not having a father. I remember there was a young girl who was about 16, and her and a bunch of other young people were in there. And I was trying to tell them that, you know, you guys have your whole life ahead of you. God wants to do something awesome with your life. You know, I'm just giving them just the motivational speech. I feel like this is what they need to hear at this moment. And this 60-year-old girl had her head down about the whole time. And then she looks up and she's like, what about me? So what about you? She's like, God didn't have a plan for me in my life for my ugly self. And I was like, why would you say that? You're not ugly, you're beautiful. God has a plan for you. He told Jeremiah, before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you and he knows you. And she's like, sir, I've been in 15 foster homes. I'm 16 years old. The last time I would live with my father, he tried to kill me with a knife. I'm too old to be adopted now. I'm just going to grow out of this. And she was really broken. And I remember like leaving the place like in tears. Like I tried to encourage her and share a word. And because of the nature of working volunteer work with DFACS, you can't like communicate with the kids. You can't exchange information. So I don't know where this girl has gone to now as an adult because she's grown by now. But it struck me to realize just how important it is to be a father or to have a father. And for her to say her father tried to kill her, I can only imagine what her relationships or who she chooses as a mate based off this bad experience could be. My heart really went out. And there was another one, my daughter, I take my kids with me sometimes to volunteer. And I remember there was a little boy there and we were like, we finna go. And, you know, we usually try to just give a dap, but this boy just ran in for the hug. And I'm like, okay, this is against the rules. I'm sorry. Okay, he gave me a hug. What am I supposed to do? And he looked up and my daughter just busted out in tears as we left. And he said, I wish I could go with you guys. And it struck me. I realized the importance of being a father and a male role model. And if you guys have any personal stories or anything you want to share about fatherhood or fatherlessness, or even a time where you had to step in, Frank, or be, you know, a voice of reason in a young person's life, would you like to share now? You can, as we prepare to close out.
I just wanted to say one or two quick things. We're talking about fathers and sons, but, you know, women are really important.
Yes.
It's very, I mean, if the couple cannot get along, like Amy was saying about interrelationships earlier, If they can't get along, then that sinks the ship right there. So women are very important. And I also wanted to say that with me and my personal experiences of being a father, that what I've noticed for my kids is that fierceness is not working too well. And like the best, what's been working for me is gentleness and taking a deep breath when I want to lose it, or they're about to lose it, and showing, like I said, patience. And it makes me think of Jesus of the Bible and how he approached human beings during his time on earth. It was similar. It was all about forgiveness and letting that other person talk, even when you know they're wrong, for example. And you have a son that thinks they know exactly, he'll continue to say, "Yeah, Dad, I know. Hey, watch out for this. Yeah, Dad, I know." And basically, sorry.
It's all right. That's good. The kids are there. Good.
You know what I'm saying? But that's been the key for my 15-year-old son, is that not being as fierce and being as controlling, and that old way that our fathers kind of instilled in us and stuff like that. I don't think some of those techniques work as good on these younger children anymore. And we got to be more multifaceted. You got to have more arrows in our quiver to use as a father. Right. Can't just do it one or two ways.
All right, awesome. Anyone else had an experience they want to share with any children or personal things you want to share?
Well, I would just say that, God is a God of second chances. And I know of some men who may not have directly raised their children, like in the home with them. But I have watched them integrate themselves into their children's lives to be that father, even from a distance. And I think that is important too. So, if that father is not in the home, he still can just make every effort to be as active as possible. Even that little bit still makes a difference in the life of that child, and they can still grow up feeling, secure, and they can move forward and be good citizens and have all the good, rich values that, we want them to have. So I've personally watched that, and I've watched, my father be an influence to other young men whose fathers was not in their life, and teach them work ethics, and how to be good citizens and be responsible. And so we just have to play our part as much as we can as individuals. When the Lord brings somebody across our path, that we make sure that we're pouring into their lives those good things, good characteristics that God would have them, have, so that they can be the people that he's called them to be. That's what we must do. That's what I strive to do for every young person or people that come across my path. So I would just encourage anyone, don't feel like you can't do something. You can do something, because we all play a role.
All right. Awesome. I appreciate you guys for being on the panel tonight. If you can, I'd just like for each of you to just share how the people can find you should they want to reach out. If you want to give your social media or other ways they can reach out to you, you can go ahead and give it now.
I'll pass to the ladies. I'm kind of off social media. I'm doing an experiment to see if my life is actually better without it. So I apologize on that. So I'll pass to Fernita.
Well, thank you, Frank. I'm kind of like you. I'm just on Facebook, so you can look me up, Fronita Holston. I'm just on Facebook. I'm a little bit on Instagram, but I'm just getting my feet, wet with all this stuff.
Right.
Well, I'm on Facebook. I can be found on Facebook at Amy Tarver.
All right. And what I do, if you guys want, I can put the link at the description of the video so that you guys will be able to reach out to our panelists. If you want to get it frank, leave a comment, like, share, subscribe, but you can leave a comment and then we can try to get him out if you want anybody for any speaking engagements or anything of that sort. But we appreciate each of you guys for taking your time to be here today. It has been awesome, and I'm hoping that the audience has enjoyed it and we've all gathered something to make us better at understanding the fatherless epidemic that plagues our country today. Thank you guys each for being a part of this program. And this is brought to you by Misfits of Media. We appreciate you guys for checking us out. Micah and the crew, we're out.